I mean, John couldn't dance to Stayin' Alive, but he said he was comfortable walking to it. So off you go.
Apple Music Essentials.
The Bee Gees, Barry Gibb.
Music's most influential artists and the stories behind their songs.
We're talking to Barry Gibb about Essentials right here, and it is the longest, most comprehensive list of songs. And we're not even talking necessarily the songs that everyone else recorded, just the ones that you recorded with your brothers. It's unbelievable, the list of songs here, and I cannot wait to dive into it. It's great to have this opportunity. And you were such a weird band in the beginning, because I've watched the documentary as well, and I'm very familiar with your older music in the early days because I got turned on to it in recent years. Like, you were a weird band. You went out to the UK. I mean, you had a few records coming out in Australia, New Zealand, and then you went out to the UK and you immersed yourself in this 60s psychedelia weirdness. And somehow you found success out of that. I mean, what do you put that down to? Because you listen to these records now and they're crazy.
Yeah, but listen, Zane, naivety is everything. You know, we were as naive as you could possibly be. We were suddenly signed to NEMS, Brian Epstein and Robert Stigwood, and from there on we were just floating. We were just going along with the tide. I remember being in an elevator with Eric Clapton, going up to the NEMS offices, and in those days you could dress any way you wanted. It's different now, but you could dress any way you wanted. Eric was a cowboy, you know. I was a priest, and but it was flower power. It was we didn't just turn up in England. We walked into flower power as it was happening. And so, what do? You go down to King's Road and you buy caftans and you buy beads, and so it's just the way we were. We were so naive, and even during the 70s, we were still naive. We just didn't understand the industry. We only understood that if we wrote a good song, it might be successful.
Let's talk about Massachusetts, which is one of the oldest songs, if not the oldest on the playlist that I've got right here. A song that kind of brought you a real dose of success at the time, and kind of falls into that beautiful tradition of picking apart some of these iconic and really idyllic parts of America that you never visit, but you imagine what they're like. I don't know if you had been to Massachusetts.
We actually sang in the park in Boston, and it was raining, and it was a wonderful experience. But the song came about on our first trip to New York as a group. Robin was sailing around the harbor on some kind of tourist trip, got the idea and came to the hotel. We were just checking into the St. Regis. And he said, I've got this idea. And we took out the guitars and we just started playing because we didn't have anything else to do at that point. And the song just grew and grew. And it was Robin's idea, and it was a wonderful thing. And it was our first #1 record.
You must love learning about your songs from other people covering them. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that, because your songs have been written, you've written songs for people and they've made them hits in their own right, but ultimately your songs get covered a lot as well. It must be one of the real thrills to be able to hear the way people interpret your music.
I met with Otis Redding in New York, 1967, and Robert had arranged that because he wanted me to write a song for Otis Redding. And we talked for like half an hour, and then he left, and To Love Somebody sort of came to life that same night.
You don't know what it's like. Baby, you don't know what it's like to love somebody the way I love you.
And Janis Joplin, of course, immortalized that from the stage at Woodstock as well, which was a huge moment. And I mean, that's one of the most powerful performances of that entire weekend. And it's so remarkable, I think, that people are still discovering that these moments, I think a lot of people thought that she wrote that song. And it's just crazy.
I didn't even know that she'd recorded it until I heard it all of a sudden, And it blew me away, because I think she's amazing. I think she was amazing. And I'm delighted that she sang that song.
So tell us the story about making Jive Talkin'. I need to know. Try and think of an image or a memory or something that really springs to mind about making that song.
Jive Talkin' came to life about midnight the night before, and we hadn't figured it out what the lyrics were, but we knew where we were going with it. And we sang it to Arif, and he suggested what it really meant. Jive Talkin'. We weren't sure what it meant, but we loved it. And he focused the subject and said, go write the lyrics. And that's what we did.
When you come off the back of Jive Talk and, there's so many hooks and so many things to remember about that song. There's so many production elements and so much playing in there, which is incredible. The rhythmic guitar playing on that song is unbelievable. But the one thing that everyone really remembers musically and arrangement-wise is the synth line. It's so playful and just so much fun. It's almost guilty, and it's so loud in the song as well. What was the story behind that? How did that?
I claim that.
Because it's got a strange time signature about it as well. It's almost,
it turns around on itself, and I love to try and come up with things like that. For me, the best fun I had was knowing where things should be, knowing where when you stop singing, something has to happen. You can't just stop singing and let the track continue. There has to be something else to attract people.
Yeah, how much is too much? How much is not enough? What's the right thing? Yeah.
Part of it is arranging. The riff for Stayin' Alive came from Albie.
What was the vibe in the room when you heard that for the first time? Because, that doesn't exist, and then it does.
Yeah, I know. I can't even explain that, except that when he came up with it, let's try this, and Alan played it, Alan Kendall, and it worked a treat. And you just, all I can tell you, Zane, is you don't know.
This is the song. This is the one. If it's not going to be the one that people are going to refer to in the canon as the greatest example of songs about love, and you've got so many that you can't boil it down to one. But that one song right there is insane.
When I hear it now, I hear how prophetic those words were. New York Times effect on man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive. How appropriate is that now?
Yeah.
When in those days, you might not have thought of it that way. But a lot of people who had heart attacks and things like that were saved by that groove, because medicine and doctors were starting to use Stayin' Alive as some form of CPR,
What? Really?
Absolutely. And when we were doing shows, or when I was doing shows about maybe 2 years back, I was meeting fans all the time that would tell me that their father had survived a heart attack because they did CPR to stay alive.
Wow.
And so that's gratifying, isn't it? It's a wonderful thing. And whether you like the song or not, John couldn't dance to Stayin' Alive. And it wasn't a dance record, if you think about it. But he said he was comfortable walking to it. So off you go.
That's how that iconic scene came about, is he didn't want to dance to it. If he said, let me strut to it.
Yeah, because it's not really a dance record, And he said, you should be dancing. That's great. I'll dance to that. But he didn't want to dance to Stayin' Alive.
Well, it is a complicated. The arrangement is tricky, and it's a powerful song, and it's got a lot of vocal gymnastics in it. That moment again, that hook where you guys jump in there and do the. Like, you got just that moment there. You got to look at Barry Gibb laughing at my Bee Gees falsetto. I got a few little secrets in the canon. Can you tell us a story about just that and that moment when you realize, as you say, that there's space between the lyrics and there's a chance for you as a band to put a vocal hook in there, a riff?
Well, the falsetto was a discovery. I didn't know I could do it, and Arif Marden wanted one of us to scream. Something like Paul McCartney might have done, and I saw her standing there. And nobody volunteered. So I remembered that I'd sung falsettos on a song called Please Read Me on Bee Gees First. I don't know why I did that, but it worked really well. And I thought, well, I'll volunteer. I hadn't sung in falsetto in maybe 20 years. I never really sang in falsetto. But I went out there and tried to do that, and something else happened. And it sort of became a lead voice rather than a voice for special effects.
You were trying to get that Paul McCartney, like, woo, like with the rasp, and in the end you got this really sweet high tone.
That's right. So that was the suggestion. But once we discovered what it was, everyone started jumping up and down, and I couldn't escape from it. So every time there was a record that might be a single or a strong song, that everybody's vote was, do that falsetto,
And how'd you feel when they would ask you to do it? Because, like you said, it wasn't your intention.
It was wonderful fun. Once I started doing it and I started exploring the range I didn't know I had. So all I can say is I don't understand how it works. It must be a different set of muscles than your natural voice.
You know, Justin Timberlake said something really important in the documentary. With the way that you sing, it's got an instrument vibe to it. He likened your vocal arrangements to horns. And once he said that, a light bulb went off in millions of people's heads, and we all started listening to your vocals in a different way. Was he onto something? Did you treat your vocals in that way?
No. What we did was we had the pleasure of suddenly having like 64 tracks, you know. In the beginning, we had 4. And that became 8, and then it became 16. And then suddenly you've got countless tracks. So we spent a lot of our time just adding more harmonies, you know. So Too Much Heaven is probably a perfect example of that. We just kept adding more harmonies. And it worked. And so many elements in that song. The record itself is actually pretty amazing.
You Should Be Dancing. Tell us a good story about that one, please.
Well, there were 4 different sessions for You Should Be Dancing, and none of them really worked until we buckled down and started figuring out what the right groove was, you know, what the right tempo was. In other words, you can write a good song, but if the showcasing is wrong, it doesn't work, and vice versa, you know. So we spent a lot of time figuring out what that was. I think we came up with it at 461 Ocean Boulevard in the lounge. We were set up to play, and the idea just came.
How Deep Is Your Love is one of those songs that when you hear it, it's just such an effortless experience to listen to. Was it effortless to write?
Sort of. We were having dinner at the Chateau in Hérouville outside Paris, because that's where we made that record. And we were having dinner, and the chorus of How Deep Is Your Love, which is, you know, how deep is your love? How deep is your love? That just hit me in the head. And I said to everybody, let's go back to the studio. Finish dinner, let's go back to the studio now. Something's going on and I want to get this thing finished. Whatever this is, let's figure it out. And so we went up to the studio and I asked Blue Weaver, play me the nicest chord on the piano. And it happened to be an E flat. So we thought, okay, well, that's a good key. Let's do it in that key. It basically came about that way. And then we spent the next day just doing lyrics and figuring it out. But it was a very, a very special, floaty event. We knew it was good, but we had to come up. You know, a lot of this is when you have a chorus. You might come up with a chorus. You've got to work backwards. You've got to figure out how you get to the chorus. And the chorus is something everyone's going to remember, but you've got to get to it. So it's a little bit of reverse thinking.
And there must be moments when you came up with a chorus that probably could have turned into another smash hit single, but you couldn't figure out the parts to go with it, right?
That's right. It's a little journey, but you've got the chorus. You've got it. It works. It's lovely. Now we've got to find out where the verse is. How do you get there?
Who knows what's still to come?
It was a pleasure.
Such a joy. I'll remember it forever. Thank you, Barry.